What's up, everybody? Welcome back. We're here with some more NFL DFS picks and lineup advice for DraftKings and FanDuel. This time for the single game showdown slate on Monday Night Football to close out Week 9. It's the Arizona Cardinals and the Dallas Cowboys. In this video, we will discuss the injuries that impact tonight's slate. We will look at core plays and low-risk lineup construction tips. And then, on a slate that is very tough with pricing, we will build some lineups at the end of the video. So stick around to show you how you can build for various contest sizes and types. Welcome, I'm Brian Jester, co-founder here at Occupy Fantasy, single game $1 million winner. And let's jump into it here. And we'll start with the injuries. The visiting Arizona Cardinals, obviously the biggest injury is the quarterback situation. Kyler Murray is officially questionable. However, Jacoby Brissett is expected to draw the start tonight. Brissett has been pretty good and in fact has outplayed Kyler Murray in Murray's absence the last two games. Now, with Murray being technically questionable, the reports are he could have a role. That's the quote. He could have a role. But if he has a foot injury and his biggest asset over Brissett would be his mobility, he's not going to have a real role. I assume the role he would have is the backup quarterback and not necessarily some packages of plays. So I think we project Jacoby Brissett as we normally would, unless we get some sort of pregame report here in the next few hours. So Brissett will start tonight. Running back position, also interesting. They're getting back Emari Demercado, who missed their last game back in Week 7. Remember, he was playing some third downs with Trey Benson when Trey Benson was the starter and when Michael Carter got the lead in Week 5. But he missed Week 7, also was in the doghouse after that long touchdown fumble back in Week 5. Bam Knight has been the lead guy the last couple of games. Let's go with the Bam Knight, $7,000 on DraftKings. And Bam Knight, this is what the coaching staff has said. They laid out their plan. How it's going to play out exactly, we don't know. But Bam Knight is going to draw the start, and he's going to get first crack at touches. They also are going to elevate Michael Carter from the practice squad. If you weren't paying attention, he got released, signed back to the practice squad. They're going to elevate him by 4 p.m. today. He's going to mix in as well. Emari Demercado will also mix in. All three guys will get chances, and they will go with, I quote, head coach Jonathan Gannon, whoever is the most effective. Now, the most effective has been Bam Knight, so he's the most likely. He is the highest projected running back across the DFS industry. So expect ownership to follow. But this could go any which way. He misses a block, fumbles, doesn't look good in the first quarter. Michael Carter could come in. We don't know who's going to get third downs. Demercado used to play third downs, long down and distance. Then Michael Carter did it. And then even in their last game, Bam Knight got some 2-minute snaps. So the one thing we do know, Bam Knight's most likely to get the goal line and short yardage work, which probably raises his touchdown equity higher than the other two guys on the roster. All this is to say, it's a very difficult situation. You probably, in most contests, want a max of one Arizona running back in your lineups. Even though the other guys, Carter is a little bit cheaper and Demercado especially is cheaper, it seems like there's only room for one guy to get there in the optimal lineup tonight, unless you're building some sort of weird Arizona 5-1 onslaught lineup. On the defensive side of the ball, Will Johnson, one of their starting corners for Arizona, is technically questionable. It sounds precautionary, just monitoring actives. If he's out for some reason, that would be a boost to Dallas receivers and Dak Prescott. On the Dallas side, and the reason I do this injury section in every video, the reason I post the injury upgrades and downgrades, excuse me, in Discord for the main slates every weekend is we want to look at what has changed over recent games. Dallas has had a bunch of guys injured on defense this year. So defense versus position stats, game totals, fantasy scoring, all that's already factored in. We want to look at what has possibly changed that projections are missing. Generally, this means guys who are newly out of the lineup. But also the flip side is true as well. They're getting back safety Wanye Thomas tonight, which should be a boost over what we've seen recently with Dallas's passing defense. So maybe a slight upgrade to Dallas's passing defense, slight downgrade to Arizona's receivers and Jacoby Brissett. On the offensive side of the ball, Dallas is getting back their starting center that started this season in Cooper Beebe. He'll be activated from injured reserve. This will be the first time they've had their full offensive line since week 2. So certainly an upgrade. In a game that has a lofty total of 54 points, a full healthy offensive line should help the Cowboys try to do their part. All right, let's move on to low-risk contests now, 50-50s, double-ups, head-to-heads. Talk about some core plays. And these core plays, these are the guys you want to jam into your low-risk lineups. But they're also going to make up a good portion of your high-risk lineups as well. 4, sometimes even 5 of these plays. So let's start with DraftKings. And generally, we'd like to lock up all the scoring play in both quarterbacks, both running backs. But as you could probably figure out from the Arizona running back situation, no guy is really that safe And Bam Knight isn't priced cheap enough for us to be super interested on DraftKings in low risk contests at $7,000. If he was like $1,000 cheaper, I would say so. But instead, we want to get Brissett, Dak Prescott, and a starting running back for the Cowboys in Javonte Williams. That leaves 5,500 roughly left per player. And we could play a high upside, high ceiling receiver instead of Bam Knight. And that's generally the right way to go for DraftKings low risk in this type of situation. 29.50 left per player. We could do one of two things. We could punt with Jaden Blue, who will be a popular value. At least 4,500 left per player. We could play Michael Carter. We could play Zay Jones, Cowboys defense. It's not that great. We could also just play high floor, high ceiling kicker Brandon Aubrey and punt the final spot. $500 remaining. We could go Hunter Lepke, fullback. He'll get a touch or two. Anybody else down here? Not really. Yeah, it's pretty gross down here. So really, it's Lepke if you go this route. I prefer this route, and I think it's probably the way to go in DraftKings low-risk contest tonight. Go over to FanDuel. Now, his pricing, he's actually, in a vacuum, more expensive on FanDuel. But Bam Knight, because of the $60,000 salary cap compared to $50,000, is a better play, and with his touchdown equity and half-point PPR scoring, probably a better play at his price tag than CeeDee Lamb in low-risk contests. So we played Dak, Javonte, Jacoby Brissett. We played Zonovan Knight, Bam Knight. 47.50 left per player. If we tried to play Brandon Aubrey, let's see what this looks like. Aubrey 7K, 2,500. We could play backup tight end Ryan Flanoy, who we'll talk about here in a bit, but should have more snaps tonight. Hunter Lepke, kind of the same approach on DraftKings, except you're swapping out Bam Knight for CeeDee Lamb, and it makes sense giving the setup here. The other thing I thought about was Brissett against Dallas's defense. Maybe we swap Jacoby Brissett to the MVP spot. But in reality, it doesn't give you that much more salary to work with. So it's not really a big benefit to doing that in low-risk contests tonight. Just slot in Dak, play the core plays, and then the last two spots are up to you. All right, let's talk about high-risk contests now. Leagues, GPP, satellites have to beat a lot of people to win a lot of money. And we'll switch it up a little bit. We'll build lineups for small field and large field contests, go through the process for both DraftKings and FanDuel. I know a lot of you asked for FanDuel, so we'll build some FanDuel lineups as well. Let's get some more water. Sips in first. And I know most of you enjoy the water break segments and enjoy being hydrated, but there are a select vocal few of you who are leading the charge against the water sip breaks. We appreciate the interactions for sure. Don't know what you have against water, but we're going to continue to hydrate here on the channel. So let's go back to DraftKings. And let's start first by thinking about who will be the popular captains and MVPs for tonight. Popular captains on both sites. Popular captain and MVPs. Dak Prescott, Jacoby Brissett, both quarterbacks, CeeDee Lamb. And then on DraftKings, we'll have a little bit more ownership on Trey McBride, the tight end. We have him over 10% projected ownership. Don't think he'll get over 10% on FanDuel. So he would be the number 4 guy in terms of ownership. So those 4 guys on DraftKings minus McBride over on FanDuel. Now, the popular values, and we're thinking under the kickers and defenses, 3 main guys on DraftKings. Let's scroll down. It'll be Michael Wilson, who is for some reason priced at $3,200. He's the wide receiver 2 for Arizona. You can pretty much slot him in for at least a few fantasy points, but if he's projected for 6+ fantasy points like he scored the last couple of games, easy play at $3,200 on a slate that doesn't have great value. Next, we have Kevontae Turpin at $2,000. He'll be relatively popular as well, and we know that they like to get him the ball when he's in the game generally. Not a great game in Week 8 against the Broncos, but generally you can slot him in for a few fantasy points when he's on the field. So Turpin will be popular at $2,000, a much better price than when he was $4,000, and he needed to do a little bit more to enter the optimal lineup. Not necessarily the case tonight at $2,000. And finally, it'll be Jaden Blue. Rookie, now the running back 2 for Dallas since Miles Sanders has gone down. Slot him in for a few fantasy points, and at $1,400, that could easily be enough to be optimal if the studs perform up to expectations. So those are the 3 guys that when we're building and we're looking for a cheaper piece to round out our lineup, those are the guys that we need to say, okay, is the rest of our lineup chalky? We probably have to avoid these guys. On FanDuel, it's also Jaden Blue. Let's clear this lineup. It's also Jaden Blue. Even though he's more expensive at $4,200, we expect him to be popular. It shows how really tough the pricing is tonight. Half-point PPR scoring running backs are a little more valuable. And the other one is Ryan Flanoy, who we mentioned earlier briefly. Now, he actually played 40% of the snaps last week. That could be due to the blowout, could be game script related against the Broncos. However, there are trade rumors for Jalen Tolbert, their former wide receiver 3. Tolbert only played 18% of the snaps last week. And it sounds like he's in trade talks at the trade deadline here. And delusional Cowboys fans on Twitter are trying to throw him in the packages for Minka Fitzpatrick and Trey Hendrickson. And this isn't a shot at Cowboys fans. It is a shot at delusional fans who think that the player on their team is worth much more and that they should be included in packages for stud defensive players. Not how that works. Either way, Tolbert, 18% of snaps last week, and I'm wondering, are they saving him for the trade deadline? Don't want him to get hurt, and that's why he played so few snaps last week. No longer in their future plans. Let's get Flanoy and Turpin more involved. That's probably the most likely. Could they showcase him for a trade tonight? It doesn't seem likely based on what happened last week. But Tolbert, he did score last week on limited snaps. He's relatively talented, and he's going to be virtually unowned tonight because of how sharp the industry and DFS is now. They saw how few snaps he played. He won't have that high of a projection. So Tolbert's a good pivot. But because of that, with Flanoy playing more snaps tonight, he'll be popular at $2,000. So Blue and Flanoy on FanDuel. Blue, Michael Wilson, and Kevontae Turpin on DraftKings will be the popular values. So let's build a small field GPP lineup, 500 players or less, ideally less, but 500 players or less. And we could play a great captain, and then depending on how much salary we leave, what the lineup construction looks like, we can play at least one low-owned player in the flex. So our model loves Trey McBride tonight. And Trey McBride is the top play on DraftKings in our model tonight. Let's play him at captain. We have him at 13% projected ownership. He won't be super popular, over 20%, we won't think, in small field GPPs. So we probably want another low-owned player to go with him. We don't necessarily have to. But let's build out some correlation here. We'll pair him with his quarterback in Jacoby Brissett. Maybe we play the opposing running back instead of two quarterbacks. We get Javonte Williams. He gets the scoring for Dallas in this potential game script. Pair him up with Brandon Aubrey. At least 6,250 left per player. We could play someone like, let's go with CeeDee Lamb. What does that look like? 1,700, not great, very limited options. We could go with George Pickens. At least 3,750 left per player. We could play Tolbert, Cardinals defense, Michael Wilson. And I think because we're fading CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott, two of the most popular plays overall on this slate, we could probably get away with playing Michael Wilson, and we get a little bit more correlation with Jacoby Brissett here. So despite us only having one true low-owned play and Trey McBride at 13% captain, relatively speaking, I think we can get away with this because we have this one-track mind of we have to get one extra low-owned player in there. But if we're fading two popular guys that most of the field will have, we could probably get away with it by doing this. So I think that's one way to build for small field on DraftKings. Now FanDuel, the top two guys on our model tonight for FanDuel are Dak and Javonte Williams. Generally, we want to play a quarterback in small field GPPs on FanDuel, so let's go with Dak Prescott. Want to pair him with a pass catcher at least. We'll go CeeDee Lamb. And now a couple ways we can go here. Do we want to go double quarterback? It is a little bit better on FanDuel. Let's go Brissett. See how this looks. Pair him with, let's keep scrolling. Let's see here. Maybe we go Chad Ryland over here, the opposite team kicker, 6,800. And Dak, we could pair him with another pass catcher in Flanoy, a cheap pass catcher. 7,400 left per player. We could go Zonovan Knight. Could go double kicker. The problem here is we don't have any low-owned players. Ryland will be right around that 20% mark. But if we're playing a really popular MVP, we definitely need one low-owned player in the flex. So let's switch this out. Let's go, instead of Brissett, we'll play Zonovan Knight. And we could leave salary and go George Pickens, go Trey McBride. And by leaving salary, that's a good option. But it's really tough for them to outscore Jacoby Brissett on this slate in this type of setup. So let's get out of here. Let's play Brissett again. Who's low-owned that we can pair? No one in this range. Maybe Michael Carter. That's actually a decent option because everyone's going to play Bam Knight. We just make one pivot to Michael Carter, and now we have a pretty decent leveraged small field GPP lineup with a popular MVP. So that's one way to build. And again, these are the things that you should be thinking about as you're hand building. Ideally, you're using our lineup builder or an optimizer, and you're putting in rules, you're using projections, and you're spitting out lineups, and you're picking which ones look best, or you're building 5 to 6 lineups for your small field GPPs, or you're building 150 or 20 for your large field GPPs, and you're not making these really tough hand-built decisions. But I still want to look at building a large field GPP lineup because I don't recommend ever hand building a large field GPP lineup unless you're building a bunch of them. But you're going to do it probably regardless of what I say. So let's show you how to do it. And let's think about really if you are properly using our lineup builder or an optimizer or Sims or whatever it may be, when lineups are spit out, you're still going to go through them. We talk about this in our Showdown guide. You want to review your lineups before you enter them. And if some are too chalky or some are too crazy, you can still do the exercise we're doing here to think about, does this make sense for not only this contest, for this game script, but for my entire portfolio of lineups. All right, lots of talking, lots of hydration here. All right, let me pull up my notes here. And I think the one thing we need to think about here is with the tighter pricing and with the higher total, that combination alone tends to have optimal lineups that are closer to the salary cap, 50K on DraftKings, 60K on FanDuel, but a little bit more uncorrelated. So what does that mean? So something like this, while you would never hand build because it doesn't make sense, when we lack value and more points are scored, weird things happen just to get whatever is possible into the optimal lineup. So let's say we go with CeeDee Lamb, another high-ranking captain in our model. Tonight we pair him with Dak Prescott, but instead we play Arizona's defense. Generally, you would never do this, but if the values fail and the Cardinals get a couple turnovers, God forbid a touchdown, then they're optimal, and it's really hard to hand build and end up on this type of construction. So you really want to loosen your rules if you're using a lineup builder or optimizer when you're using near most of the salary for tonight. All right, we'll play Bam Knight, 6,500 left per player. We can go with maybe Kevontae Turpin, 11,000. Javonte Williams, that's interesting. Again, this is super uncorrelated, but it's not as near the salary cap as I would have liked. Let's play Trey McBride. Let's take Turpin out. 4,000 left per player. This is more interesting. Zay Jones, Jalen Tolbert, Michael Wilson. Let's take Knight out again, and let's play a kicker. How does this look? Let's play Brandon Aubrey. Could go double kicker, Michael Carter. Options. So playing a defense versus a captain, maybe Jacoby Brissett outscores Dak, so not playing Dak and instead playing Jacoby Brissett. That's interesting with Zonovan Knight. That's extremely interesting, actually, something like this. So these are the types of weird lineups that can get there when the total is high and the pricing is really tight and we don't have much value. Let's go over to FanDuel. And another option, this is how I won the Millie. When you have a high total game like this, playing for the under. Field's never going to do that. But if you play for this game to go under the total, that's hard to envision, yes, but believe me, it happens every single week of the NFL season. We want to play more running backs and a defense in our lineup, maybe no quarterbacks. Our model, again, really likes Javonte Williams at MVP. Let's play him in MVP. Let's pair him up with Cowboys defense. We'll play Aubrey as well. And now we can play the opposing quarterback maybe in Jacoby Brissett. A little bit of an anti-correlation there, but again, it's large field, and we're looking for weird ways to get different. Pair him with Trey McBride, who can get there on receptions. And then we could play double kicker, Michael Carter, passing down back in a game that Arizona trails. You can tell that story for sure. And if you scroll down, if you want to leave more salary, which generally happens in an under game, you can play Michael Wilson. And this makes more sense too. So these are all the things you have to think about as you're building. So we built 4 lineups on screen, really 6 lineups if you include low risk. So hopefully that gets the juices flowing for building your lineups for tonight's game. Our daily plug is already up on the site, occupyfantasy.com. Our writer Bismo gave his thoughts, talked about how he's building lineups for tonight, so make sure you go read that. Link is in the description below. Models up and running with projected ownership. You can get rankings for every single player on DraftKings and FanDuel. I referenced a few guys in here. You get all the players, all the rankings at occupyfantasy.com as low as $7 a week. We'd love to have you as a member. And then Discord, where I talked about, where I post the injury updates every weekend for the main slate. You want to get access to that, links in the description. Members can have access. And if you subscribe here on YouTube, it's like $2.99 or $1.99 a month. Even if you're not a member of our website, you can get access to our Discord. So for Occupy, I'm Brian. Thanks for listening. Good luck and enjoy tonight's Cardinals and Cowboys Showdown slate.